Hey guys, Chad Hoover, Kayak Bass and TV, and today I'm going to talk to you about flipping and pitching, mostly flipping. Haha. All right, so flipping, pitching, punching, they're all probably used interchangeably and a lot of times incorrectly. We're going to talk primarily about flipping, punching, but a little bit of pitching mixed in. So first and foremost, the first thing that I do is I use heavy braid when I'm flipping. For the most part, you don't have to worry about them seeing the line. I use a Sharpie at the end to finish it up so the line doesn't show up as much, but I'm a big fan of this 60-pound braid from Kansan. It's super slick, it's durable, it doesn't cut into the vegetation too much for making it slide through the mat really easy. So big fan of that, and I like to use a heavy weight. I've used a lot of tungsten over the years, but I've been super happy for over a year with this Woo tungsten. They're affordable, they're durable, they're insert free, they're nice and rounded and beveled entry and exit. Just a phenomenal product. Super happy with that, and really happy to be part of their pro staff. So Woo tungsten makes a great product for a very effective presentation, and that's flipping and punching. Now, I will fall on the sword and say that I haven't brought you guys enough of that over the years because it's boring to film, okay? It's hard to film by yourself, and it's even more boring to film for a television show when you're doing it from a kayak, so I just haven't done it. But if I'm fishing a tournament, if I've got to put a fish in the boat, and I've got hot summer days, or I've got fish that have moved shallow under grass in the late summer into fall, and there's a lot of oxygen-rich water associated with that vegetation, it's one of my go-to presentations to guarantee myself fish. Let me show you how I set it up. First and foremost, there's a lot of options when it comes to flipping and pitching setups, okay? And you can get intimidated by it, or you can keep it simple, or you can kind of split the difference. I overdo everything. I'm super anal about my presentations, about how my lures are set up, but those little sweat the small things I think are what puts a lot of fish in the boat for me. So I'm going to talk to you about that. First and foremost, anytime there's the opportunity for me to be presented with an opportunity to flip or pitch, I've got a little flip box. It's just this little waterproof Plano box. The reason that I don't put my tungsten in the same box, my heavy tungsten in the same box as my other weights, is if you take 4 or 5 of these heavyweight tungstens and you put them in a box, you can have upwards of $100 in tungsten in a small box, and with no air trapped in it, if you happen to drop it over the side, kick it over the side, capsize your kayak or whatever, it's going to sink to the bottom and it's going to hurt, right? So if you use these smaller boxes with this waterproof seal in it, they're going to be buoyant. So if I drop this in the water with 4 or 5 tungsten weights in it, it's going to stand up on its end because the weight's going to go to one end, and I'm going to be able to recover my flipping box. Now, I use a flipping box and keep it in my tackle box, but what I keep in my PFD is what I like to refer to as a flip kit. I go with the lightest weight that I think I can get away with, a couple of hooks and a couple of line stops, and I've got that in my PFD. Most of the time, you got to talk yourself into flipping or pitching, and if you got to talk yourself into digging through your tackle box to find the stuff, you can talk yourself out of it. So I like to have my stuff, one available in my PFD, one available in my box, and this is kind of like the mothership, and this is the little isolated box that I put in my PFD. So let's talk about how you set up a basic rig first, and then we'll get into some of the specifics that I do. The foundation of a flipping rig is that you're going to take your braid and you're going to use one of these line stops from Woo Tungsten. They come pre-threaded with this little line puller. You're going to pull out about 6 to 10 inches of line, and you're going to simply use that to pull your line through. Once you pull your line through, you don't want to use this to pull the line all the way through because it can weaken your braid. You just want to get that through there and then take your tag in and pull it the rest of the way out, okay? Once you've got one line stop on there, you can generally put the weight on and then tie the hook on, and that's what a lot of folks do. So I'm going to go ahead and put the weight on here, but I'm going to show you something I do a little different. It's not something I come up with. It's something that I've seen other anglers do, and I really like the concept. So after you got your first line stop on, before you tie your hook on, simply run your line through your line stop. And again, let me show you how this works again a little better. Grab that, pull your line stop onto the line, take your little feeder wire and pull it out so you don't cut your braid, and then pull the braid through the rest of the way. Now, I get really selective with the types of knots that I use in other presentations. But when it comes to flipping, there's only one knot to use, and that's a Palomar. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this line, we're going to double it over, we're going to go through this traditional flipping hook, we're going to make an overhand loop just like this. We're going to take that line, we're going to bring it over the hook, clear it of the stop. And it doesn't matter as much with big heavy braid, but just get in the habit of not pulling your main line because it can weaken it, and pull your tag in when you're cinching any type of Palomar knot. What I'm going to do from here is I'm going to clip that little piece off, and we're going to set the rig up, okay? This rig is really simple, okay? The reason that I put that line stop on the bottom is I don't want this heavy weight slamming into my plastic and fouling up my rig, and I want that plastic to articulate a little bit. When that weight goes through the mat, it's going to fold that bait in half, and as soon as it gets through, I don't want it to be stuck. You know, I don't want it to be flipping over. I want it to pop through and swing through, and as soon as I yo-yo it the first time that bass grabs it, and they're hooked in the corner of the mouth or in the nose. So you want that bait to punch through, and as soon as it flips over, you want that bait to be able to free swing to add a little action to it, because 9 times out of 10, they're going to grab it immediately. When they grab it immediately, they're going to get hit. They're going to get hooked. I'm going to show you how to ensure that in the way that you set up your plastic and in the way that you use your rod and how you flip at the end of this video. So stay tuned, make sure you watch it all the way to the end. So again, one of the things that I do is I set up a line stop on both sides because I don't want that weight to run into the plastic. I want it to hit that plastic, but I want it to stop just short of it so it doesn't knock my plastic down on the hook and foul it up. And then what you do is you just take your other line stop and bring it down right in the front of the weight. That's going to make that weight stay right where it's at. It's going to punch through that grass, but it's going to leave a little bit of articulation for that bait. Yeah. So I've got a few baits that are my favorites for flipping, pitching, and punching. And so we're going to start off, one of my favorites is the Flapping Hog from Yamamoto. This bait is salty. It's got a lot of appendages on it. It's got a lot of action, and they just love it. They eat it up. Another bait that I like that is a little more buoyant, it's not as salty, but I like to soak it in the hog tonic that comes with it, or some Cox juice from John Cox, or a little bit of smelly jelly, is the Conviction Crawl from Power Team Lures. The reason that I like this lure is it comes with the pinchers attached in the beginning, okay? Now, you can break the first tab to give it a little bit of action, or you can break both tabs to give it a lot more action. When that bait punches through and when those crawls are attached, as soon as it pops through, it creates a lot more water displacement when they're attached together. So I like to leave them attached, let the fish tear them apart, and I get a lot more life out of that bait. So let's start by rigging this Conviction Crawl and talk about how to do it. So if you can see the little hook keeper, what you want to do is go that far into the bait and then flip it around. So I like to just eyeball it, but kind of know that I'm going to come in about the distance to that hook keeper, and I'm going to come in, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this bait up onto the hook. So one of the things you can do to make that easier is you can wet the hook and salivate on it before you run it up, and it'll come up on there nice and easy. And then you want to rotate the bait, cover up the hook eye so that it goes through the punch mat real easy, and then that keeper just digs in right behind it. I'll tell you that one of my favorite lure hooks for this type of fishing all the way around is the Mustad grip pin hooks. I like them in the weighted keel hook, and then I like them in the standard grip pin because that grip pin serves the same purpose as the keeper. But let me show you the difference between it and a standard flipping hook. A standard flipping hook has got a little piece of wire that sticks out and that catches on the vegetation. This grip pin hook has got a PVC coated stopper that's not as abrupt. It still holds the bait in place, but it doesn't catch on the grass. So I like this hook a lot better for flipping in really thick stuff. As it starts to open up and the mats aren't as thick, I'll go to a standard flipping hook. But I'm going to use a standard flipping hook to show you what we're talking about, and then I'll re-rig it and show you how to use it with the grip pin. What I like to do is take the hook, and if I can get it through the mat by side hooking it, I'll do that. I'll just hook it into the side. That way when the fish grabs it, they're good. If it fouls up on the first couple of casts, then I'm going to take my hook, I'm going to line it up, and then I'm just going to bury it in the plastic. I'm not going to skin it like you would with a Texas hook, a Texpose, or skinning it. And I want that little kink in it. Then I'm going to set my stopper up to where that weight comes down, but it doesn't hit the plastic. It doesn't foul it up. And then I'm going to put my other stopper on there. That is a perfect flipping setup. It's a bait that's going to articulate a bit. The weight's not going to run into the plastic and knock it down the hook shank, so it's not going to foul it up. and then you've got some action and articulation, and that bait, when it punches through, as soon as that bait punches through the grass and that thing swings free, that fish is going to be on it. I'm going to talk to you about that in a second when I show you how to flip. So that's important that that bait is set up like that, so it has that articulation in it, because as that weight comes through and it frees itself from the grass, you want that bait to swing and have a little bit of articulation to it. All right, that's important, and I'll talk about that when I show you how to pitch it. So again, that's one way to set it up. Another bait that's one of my favorites, one of my absolute favorites for punching and flipping, is a Yamamoto Yama Frog. And the main reason that I like this is I like to fish it on a keel weighted hook. Okay, the way that this works is you want to wet that hook first. You're going to bring it through the nose of the frog. You're going to turn it out. You're going to run it up over that weight, and then you're going to run up over that grip pin. You see how that grip pin kind of catches behind the plastic and it holds it in place? And then what you're going to do is you're going to take this hook and you're going to bring it to the other side of the, well, if the line was attached, you could just pop it back in there. You're going to bring it to the other side and you're going to bury it. I mean, you're going to stick it in that frog. If the nose pops off, you got your line attached, you can actually just punch it right back through there and it's nice and hooked. The reason that that's awesome is that's going to pop off and pop on, but it's not going to tear the bait up. You're going to get a lot of life out of it. I like this Yama Frog because it's buoyant. Okay, I like it because it's got a lot of action whether you move it or not. So when you drop that thing through the mat and it punches through, what happens with this keel weight is it actually swings down below the weight. You don't have to get the weight through and pull it back up. Again, that's going to be important when I tell you about how to flip, because 95% of the time they're going to hit that bait immediately upon it punching through. And so you don't want your weight to go through first, right? And then it take a minute for your lure to get through and they hit the bait and the hook is facing up. That happens a lot, and you've had it happen to you whether you know it or not. So with this grip pin style hook with a weighted keel, it just makes that swing happen that much faster, and it lines that bait up. And then when you drop it to the bottom, it does the same thing. It creates that swinging action, and it really brings that bait to life. I don't like using this with a bait that doesn't have a lot of standalone action, because as it swings, I want those legs to come alive, and when I jig it, I want those legs to be able to move. I don't want to have to put a whole lot of action on it with this keel weighted hook, because it could swing and get the hook out of position. But that is definitely something to consider when you're punching those heavier mats, because you take that wrecking ball weight, it goes through the mat. As soon as it breaks through, you want that bait to switch around, almost like a switchblade knife opening up, and be in position when that bass hits it, because 95% of the time they're going to hit it as soon as it comes through the mat. So the grip pin hook from Mustad is a great way to go, but these impact plastic hooks are another way to go. The reason that they're a good way to go is, let's just say that you don't put your stopper on the front of the behind the weight, or that weight is so heavy it runs over the top of the stopper. What this is going to do is it's going to keep the weight from impacting your plastic and fouling it. And the reason that that happens, and that's what I like to use with this flapping hog, is you take this thing and you slide it down inside the bait, just like this, and you want to bury that keeper inside there. And then when you rig it, you want to come through it like a standard Texas rig, just like that, and line it up. And then you can come back and you want to bury it good and deep. When they hit it, when you're flipping it, they don't mess around. There is no tapping it when they hit a punched bait or a flipped bait. So what you've got is you've got this hook shank right here for the weight to come down and run into without fouling the bait. You can accomplish that by putting an extra stopper on there, or you can accomplish it by the type of hook that you use. When I'm fishing these Yamamoto baits, they're salt impregnated and they're more realistic, but they also tear up a little more than your conviction crawl or a Zoom horny toad. So the way that I extend the life is I use this bait so when they hit it, it actually pops off of there and the bait spins, and then when I want to re-rig it, I can just simply stick that peg right back in the nose and I can fish this thing all day long. If I rig this on a standard flipping hook, I'm going to go through a flapping hog almost every cast, because it's going to tear right at the point where it comes through. So pairing the right hook with the right type of plastic is going to put a lot more fish in your boat. It's going to save you money in the type of presentation that you're doing. I'm going to demonstrate that for you, because I'm actually making some Yamamoto flapping hog trailers for my jigs right now, because the water temperature is cooling down. So I'll tear one up to show you. You take this standard flipping hook, you come through there, you go through there like you would normally would. My keeper has slid down. You run that bait up on top of it, and then you turn it around and you rig it like you would a standard flipping setup. You bury that hook in there, And then the first time you hit a fish, the first time you catch a fish and it pops that out of there, that bait is now ruined. Okay, see how that works? What I'm gonna do with that, because this is what I do in the rebait concept, is I'm gonna cut that head off with my pocket knife. I'm gonna save that and make it into a jig trailer. But I really wanted to point out why the right hook matters with this type of fish and how it can save you money, it can catch you more fish, and it can reduce frustration. So selecting the right hook is critical, and the thicker the mat, the more weight you want on the hook, because the more weight you're gonna have to use to punch through it. The lighter, you want a light wire hook. Now, the hook type is still important. I've talked to you for years about the big mouth tube hook from Mustad, because it has that straight bend and the plastic can come down off of it. Now, when you're fishing a flipping setup, you don't want that to happen. So when I'm fishing light flipping, light pitching presentations where I've got holes that I'm pitching to and I don't have to punch through the cover, I like to rig the plastic. You can still use the grip pin style, but I like these lighter weight, lighter wire hooks. And when you come up over it, you want that little Z to catch that plastic and hold it in place. So that extra wide gap Z hook style bait from Mustad is a great setup for these type of baits. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna do the same thing. You're just gonna take that hook and stick it in there. I like to put a kink in the body to make it spin a bit, to make it sit in an upright posture when I'm flipping and pitching, rather than rig it Texas rig and flat on the top, because you are gonna foul that up a lot and you're not gonna catch as many fish. So we've talked about the types of hooks, we've talked about the setup, we've talked about the reasons why. One last thing I want to point out is you want to use as light a weight as you possibly can, but you want to use as much weight as you have to. You don't want to throw the bait on the mat and then have to sit there and jiggle it, because that's going to bring the fish over, and sometimes they're going to blow up at the mat before the bait even punches through, and you're not going to catch that fish because they're going to have too much vegetation. This big owner hook, a lot of times, guys, I tell you, I am sponsored by certain companies. I love their products, but there's sometimes other types of lures and things that you need. Owner makes this big swim bait hook that I also like to flip with. And the reason that I like to flip with this is if I'm flipping through a light mat and I don't want a keel weighted hook and I want a Z style, but a bigger gap, so when that fish hits it, I like to take this Yama Frog, I like to go through the nose, I like to flip it around, run it up on there like that, and leave the eye out so that the weight doesn't knock it down. And then I like to come into the body. And the reason that I like it like this when I've got a lighter mat is I like to throw it out, I like to fall through, and then I like to swim it back up to the mat. So I like to yo-yo it. And when I'm yo-yoing it, I want that extra wide gap hook, so when that fish grabs it, that hook is in his mouth every time. You know, so I like to Texas rig these, I like to skin it. This Yamamoto plastic is strong enough to keep the fish or to keep the weeds from knocking it off, but anytime a fish grabs it, you know, they're gonna be hooked as soon as they touch that plastic. So let's rig this thing up and let me show you how to flip and how to pitch and how to hold your rod. And we'll talk about the type of rod, the type of reel, and everything that you should use. So now that I've got this set up the way that I want it, see how I've got the weight behind it to keep it from punching down on top of it, messing it up, and then I've got my peg in the front to keep the weight from going up the line. I'm gonna take this, let's just go ahead and use this conviction crawl. I'm gonna come back through, I'm gonna turn it, run the bait up on top of it, and I'm gonna spin that around and make sure that that peg comes out to hold the bait in place. And then I'm gonna bury this hook inside the plastic, just like that. Next thing I'm gonna do is add some scent to it so that as soon as it punches through, it's got some realism. I'm gonna tighten that down. I want this thing to articulate. Now, you want the scent on there to cover your scent because you're gonna be touching the hook. You're gonna be touching the lure. What I would recommend that you do is minimize your contact with the lure as much as you can. And so I like to bring the lure in and grab the line, I like to run my hand down and I like to grab the hook, okay? So I'm gonna hold the hook when I'm flipping, punching, or I'm gonna grab the weight and I'm gonna try not to touch the bait as much as I can so I get less scent and less of my scent on it. But this is gonna give you the ability to engage your reel, okay? We're just gonna do a simple pitch over here by my lawnmower tire to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So you're just gonna swing the bait out and let it punch through the grass. One thing I see guys doing a lot is they wanna pitch with the wrong hand, like this. You're gonna swing the bait out and then they're changing hands as the lure is going into the grass. The problem with that is that fish is gonna hit it 95% of the time as soon as it punches through. So as soon as it comes through that grass, it's gonna kick a lot of silt out, it's gonna bust some weeds loose, and it's gonna make daylight come through, and that bass is gonna smash it. If you're in the middle of changing hands, you're gonna have a lot of hits when you don't even know it. And then you're gonna have some hits and you're gonna try to change hands real fast, reel down and set the hook. I like to do the pitch with this hand. I like to have the bell open. I swing the lure out, punch it down. I kind of swing it up and wrecking ball style, let it go through the grass. And I pull off a rod's worth of line, and then I engage the reel with my other hand. A lot of times in a kayak, I'm paddling, I'm standing. And so I like to do the flip, punch, spin, and lock. So this is in, as soon as it hits the water, I spin that with my other hand and engage, and that weight goes through. If a fish hits it as soon as it goes through the grass, I've got that rod tip behind my forearm, and boom, I stick that fish. So I'm gonna do that for you in real time. You're gonna hold the hook, you're gonna open the bail, you're gonna swing it out, punch it through, flip it, and then as soon as they hit it, boom, you can stick them. And once you stick them and you get that head up, then you can grab the reel handle and reel it down. I'm a big fan of this loose reel for flipping and pitching with these wind grips because they're oversized. When your hands get slimy, when you've got snot and grass and sweat, you can grab these wind grips. They're very grippy, they're oversized, they got the foam on there, and they just work really well. I'm not a big fan of using a low speed gear ratio like I used to back in the day. I like a high speed gear ratio. I like to be, I like to be able to just flip that bait out. As soon as it goes through, hit it, I got a lot of line take up, stick that fish, reel the slack down, and then pull my kayak over to them or drag them up and bring them to myself. So guys, listen, that's flipping and pitching. That is as simple as it gets. Realistically, when you're holding the lure, you're more pitching than flipping. Your traditional flipping is when you actually use the line and you swing the bait out and you drop it in. I like to have contact with my lure. So if you're doing that, again, you still want to hold it in your left hand. You want to swing that bait out and hit a lot of targets. You're really quick, you're fast. And then when that punches through, you drop that slack, spin it, and be ready to stick that fish. Because like I said, 95% of the time, they're gonna hit it. Use as long a rod as you can get away with. I use a 7'8" to 7'11" heavy action rod. I like a long foregrip so I can get my forearm behind it and stick that fish, and it gives me a lot of leverage. I like heavy braid, high-speed reel, oversized grips, and that's going to make sure that you are ready to stick that fish as soon as that bait punches through. So guys, listen, if you don't have this as part of your arsenal, or if you've learned something here that you do different or picked up a tip, do me a favor, smash that thumbs up button. Leave a comment below. Ask any questions if you got them. As always, I appreciate y'all's support. Welcome to the Kayak Bass Fishing Brotherhood if you're new to the channel, and be sure to smash that subscribe button. And if you've been a long-time subscriber and you don't have your notifications turned on, turn them on so you can get a notification each and every time I load up a video of this beautiful face.